simchas and more simchas. Today's shir, named The Clash of Civilizations, is a shir that I heard based on what I heard 20 years ago from my Rebbe, Shapur Zatzal. And the words that he said then are 100 times more applicable today. As you will see in a moment, what we're learning today is ancient Gemara that is alive and kicking in 2020, more relevant than ever. The Gemara begins on Daf Nun Vav Amud Aleph at the top of the page. If you have a Gemara in front of you, Gemara Brachas, Nun Vav Amud Aleph, just a reminder that this year is sponsored by NCSY, and this is Shir 193 of the series of ongoing Shiurim on Maseches Brachos. It was built in memory of my father, and I just wanted to once again thank the hosts, the NCSY and the OU, for making this happen. Amalei Kesa le Rabbi Yeshua bar Hanania. The prophet Girsa over here is Yeshua ben Hanania. That's the Rabbi Yeshua, the Rebbe of Rabbi Akiva, the Talmud of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Amalei Kesa le Rabbi Yeshua bar Rabbi Hanania. Amrisu de Chachmisa Tuva. It has been said that you people hold that you are very smart. In other words, the opening statement that Caesar, that Caesar says to Rabbi Yeshua is that you say that you are very smart. The Achronim over here point out, the Sifsei Chachamim brings that there's a pasuk in Parshas Ve'eschanam, Rak am chacham v'navain hagoy hagadol hazeh. So you people who live by your Torah, in your Torah you say that you are very smart. Emily, so say to me, my chazina b'chalmoy. Tell me what I will see in my dream tonight. So I want you to picture the scene. You have Caesar, you have Caesar, and he is asking Rabbi Yeshua to tell him, what am I going to be dreaming tonight? So Rashi tells us on the word Caesar, Melech Roimi, he was the king of Rome, V'hoyela Tagar im Parsim, and he was in a state of war with the Persians. My chazina, my era, balayla b'chalaim. What will I see tonight in my dreams? So it's important, before I tell you the dream, and before I tell you what's going on, it's important, it's almost crucial to have a little bit of historical background as to what is going on over here. In the year 1107 of the Common Era, on August the 9th to be exact, this is, to give you perspective, 47 years after the Churban of the Beis HaMikdash. The Caesar at that time then was a man called Trajan, and he dies, and a new emperor comes in as the most powerful monarch on the planet, and his name is in Hebrew Hadrianus. In English, his name is Hadrian. And he comes along. There's a new Malchus, and if you know your history, this is both throughout Chazal, because we have a lot of information about Hadrian, and everything in Chazal is consistent with the history books, and that is the following. When you talk about Hadrian, I'm British, we proudly talk about Hadrian's Wall, that the Roman Britain at that time then was kept away from the Scots, from the people in the north. So Hadrian, when he started as the emperor, at that point then, at the beginning, he was very friendly to the Jews. So basically, when we talk about Hadrian, there's two Hadrians. The first Hadrian is that he took upon himself to take an empire that at that time then was full of small uprisings. It was not a particularly stable place. Trajan had left it in disarray. And he had this dream. This was a man with a dream that first he would consolidate what he had, and then he would go and attack Persia. Like the Rashi says, Taga in Parsim, he wanted to attack Persia. Persia at that time then was the great other empire that was to his east. To get to Persia, he had to reconquer what was called in those days Parthia. Parthia is also known as Babylon. So you have today modern-day Iraq and modern-day Iran. These are the agenda. Hadrian's political goal is to spread his empire and conquer the other great empire, which is ultimately Persia, and then, like Alexander the Great, to eventually reach India, which was in those days the great dream that India held untold treasures. Just by the way, I happen to see over here David Erbsman. I have a few Talmidim over here that I taught Kuzari. You'll remember that when the king of the Khazars gives a mashal of something that is far away, it's always the king of India. And that was always the dream of the European monarchs, to conquer India and bring all its riches to their courts. Hadrian was no exception, but what stood in his way were the Persians. The Persians was the great enemy of Rome at the time. They were the true other superpower. Now, when you are running an empire and you have a big enemy, you don't look for enemies beyond that, you look for allies. And Hadrian, at the beginning of his rule, for the first 6 years, was very benevolent to the Jews, gave them lots of rights, and he courted their leaders. At that time then, the greatest leader was Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol were the leaders of Klal Yisrael at that time then. And Bereshis Rabbah, Samach Daled, Yud, brings down that he actually gave, this is going to be a shock for those of you that know a little bit of history, he actually gave them permission to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. So think about this. Here we are. This is just a generation after the Churban. This man called Hadrian comes along and says, you guys, you can rebuild your Beis HaMikdash. I don't want you to be part of the problem. I want you to be part of the solution. The enemy is Persia. Now, as we all know, that very quickly changed. In the year 123 of the Common Era, we have what's called the Bar Kokhba revolt. At that point then, Rabbi Akiva is the new leader of Klal Yisrael. After that, you have the Churban of Beitar. After that, you had the Gemaras in Gittin that we study every Tisha B'Av, that talks about the Churban Beitar as being right up there as one of the great Churbans, the great 5 Churbans that hit Klal Yisrael. In terms of the bloodbath, the descriptions over there are horrific. There was blood pouring into the Mediterranean. There was, the Gemara brings down that the rivers were 1/3 blood, 2/3 water. Afterwards, Hadrian built that hideous wall of human bodies, that Kerem Hayala Hadrianus. He had a vineyard surrounded by Jewish bodies. And then he went on a rampage of cruelty and a rampage of barbarism that we never, ever saw in history until the Holocaust. What he did then, it climaxed with the Asare Haruge Malchus. That was Hadrian. Hadrian was the one that killed Rabbi Akiva eventually. That was all him. And he died July the 10th, 139. One of the great things about coronavirus is I have more time to make sure I get all my history down pat, and it's actually fascinating. But this was after 16 years of terror, and after Hadrian came Antoninus. So Antoninus, as we all know, goes back to being friendly with the Jews. The Gadol Adar after Rabbi Akiva was Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. So you have Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai at the time of the Churban. Then you have Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Gamliel, that generation. Then you have Rabbi Akiva. He was the Churban Beitar. After that, you have his Talmidim, which we speak about this time of the year with Rav Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Meir. And immediately after that, we have Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, who is best friends with Antoninus, and that is Rome and Klal Yisrael as close as we ever had it. But the bottom line is that what we need to know for today's share is that there was a tkufa where Hadrian would look to Rabbi Yeshua for advice, and he asks him the following question. You guys are the smart people. You guys are what's called the Chachima Diyuadeh, the wise people of the Jewish people. What am I going to dream about tonight? One more piece of information I want to share with you. There's a Gemara in Brachos Ches Amud Beis. Excuse me, not Brachos, B'chayros Ches Amud Beis. That Gemara is called the Sugya of Saba Debei Atunai. It is, in the words of the Vilna Gaon, it is the most incredible Agadah that we have, because the Gra says this was a debate between the wise men of Athens and the wise men of the Jewish people, who was Rabbi Yeshua, the same Rabbi Yeshua in our story. And the Gemara begins that Caesar Hadrian invites Rabbi Yeshua to Rome and says, is it true that you are the wisest of all the men of Rome? This is how the relationship began, when Caesar says, is it true that you are the smartest of every single Jew? And he answers, yes, it is true, it is I. And I have to be honest with you, when you read that Gemara and you say, Rabbi Yeshua, hello, whatever happened to humility? But I want to insert over here, being a Brit, one of my favorite rabbi stories is Rabbi Cheskel Abramsky. Before he came and moved to Bayit V'Gam, he was one of the senior rabbis in England. Officially, he was one of the chief rabbis of England at that time then, and he was brought to a British court to give testimony on something connected to Anglo Jewry. And the judge said, is it true that you are the smartest rabbi on the British Empire? And he goes, it is true, my lord. And then the judge says, but I thought that rabbis are supposed to be humble. And here are you saying that you're the smartest of all the Jews. To which Rav Chaskel Abramsky answered, you are right, my honor, but what can I do? I'm under oath, so I have to tell the truth. So what can I tell you? Rav Chaskel Abramsky, he was the smartest Jew. Rav Yeshua was the smartest Jew back then. And the story goes that he was sent to wage war, intellectual war with the Greeks. And the Gra explains that that sugya is really the foundation block of 2,000 years of intellectual war between us and them, between the Greeks and the Talmudic rabbis. So what began with Rabbi Yeshua in Athens moves all along to 2020, to whatever it is, Panovich, Mir, Lakewood, whatever yeshiva is politically correct to say now. And on the other side, you have whatever Harvard and Yale and Oxford and Cambridge and all the other places that are trying ultimately to create a world where there's no need for God. And we are trying to create a world where there's only need for God. One more thing you need to know about the machlekes between Rabbi Yeshua and the wise men of Athens. At the very beginning of the sugya, the very first debate they have is a machlokes about how long is the pregnancy of a snake. I don't want to go into it, but Rabbi Yeshua proves his argument based on a pasuk. And the Brisker Rav has a famous little piece. My Rebbe heard it from him directly, and he said that the machlokas between Rabbi Yeshua and the Chachamim of the Greeks was what is the essence of Chachma. And the pasuk over there in B'cheres Tav Ches Amud Beis is a pasuk in Keheles that says, if I can just quote, Yisrain ha'ar min ha'chachma, min ha'cheshech. Our wisdom is like the wisdom of light over darkness. So it's a very rude way to talk about the Greeks, the wisdom of light over darkness. Besides the fact that you don't say two types of wisdoms as being opposites. What exactly is the imagery of light over darkness? So the Brisker Rav told my Rebbe a mashal, and the mashal was as follows. Imagine that you walk into a room, or you walk better into an apartment, into a house, and the house is pitch black, and you've got to maneuver yourself around. So the way that you can do it is one of two ways. One is called trial and error, which means you use your hands to figure out where the walls are, where the chairs are, where the stairs that go down are. It could be you learn the hard way. You fall down the stairs and you say, this is where there's stairs. So you learn the hard way and through trial and error how to maneuver your way around the house. That's one kind of wisdom. The other kind of wisdom is to go, boom, just to put the light on. Okay, you put the light off and you put the light on and suddenly you can see everything. Suddenly everything becomes clear. Says the Briskerov, our wisdom is based on the source of creation. In other words, when you bring a pasuk to figure out the pregnancy of a snake, you're actually getting to the source, the real truth of what is going on behind the scenes. Because how did God create the world? The answer is through the Torah. Histakel ba'oraisa or bara alma. God looks at the Torah first and then creates the world. So if you know the Torah, you know the blueprint of the earth. You've just switched the life on all of science. This is not my expertise, but whenever there's a argument between science and Torah, so I have friends that work a lot on this. I grew up in London. The Association of Jewish Orthodox Scientists, the late Rav Cyril Rzom, my father's good friend, they spent a lot of time trying to reconcile science with Torah, subjects like evolution and so on and so forth. This is not my expertise, but one thing I do know is that if you want to know ba'aymek, what is the machlokas between science and Torah, is that, like we say in Gemara, who's the muchzak and who's the meitzi mechaveri? We come along with our Torah. The Torah does not state facts that come from trial and error. There were no scientists that sat there and did experiments and came with a conclusion, and then afterwards a new bunch of experiments, so there's a new conclusion, and this keeps on changing. This is science, works through trial and error in darkness. That's why I mentioned evolution. That's why the theories keep on changing. That's why how long is the universe keeps on changing. All these things keep on changing because it's all trial and error. It's all darkness and light. Mashiach came. The Torah goes back to the source of everything. It is pure light from beginning to end. It is pure emes. Let's keep that in the back of our mind and go back to our story over here, the dream of Caesar Hadrian. He comes along and says, what am I going to dream tonight? This is not a psychological game over here. Caesar was then like Paro was in Parshas Miketz, or how Nebuchadnezzar was in his dreams in the Sefer Daniel. He was Malchus of the world. What am I going to dream tonight? I want you to implant into my brain. What I'm going to dream is the essence of everything that I am. The idea behind this, the Sifsei Chachamim brings down in other Achronim, is that the great Hadrian knew enough about Judaism that we say in the Gemara in Baba Basra, Daf Yud Beis, Chacham Adif Menavi. A Chacham, a wise guy, is smarter than a prophet. A prophet sees into the future using the koyach of prophecy. The Chacham uses wisdom to see into this future. That Chachma is deeper and more powerful. So now, Hadrian challenges the great Rabbi Yeshua, the smartest of all the Jews. At that time, then, they are friends. And says, what am I going to dream tonight? Now let's see the next line of the Gemara. What's his dream going to be? Amalei, says Rabbi Yeshua, Chazis, I see you. Demeshachri lach parsoi. So this is something over here. Rashi explains what's going on over here. Meshachri lach parsoi, oisim b'cha avodas hamelech. So what this means is that the Persians, your great enemy, are making you do servitude to them. V'garbi bach, and they are oppressing you. V'rayach bach shaksi b'chutcha d'hava. And you are actually going to be, so to speak, a master over shaksi. Shaki comes from the word sheket, insects. The Ben Yehoyada has a girsa over here that says shaksi means chazirim, pigs. B'chutra didahava, with a staff, denam, a staff made out of gold. You are going to be working for the Persians as a shepherd, and you are going to be shepherding insects and shepherding pigs, according to the Ben Yehoyada's girsa. So, once again, it's very trippy, okay? For those of you that like a nice trippy dream, he says, tonight you're going to go to sleep. And in your dream, you're going to see yourself working for the Persians as a shepherd boy. And a shepherdess, has dominion over his sheep, but it's not going to be sheep. It's going to be insects, and it's going to be pigs. And you're not going to have a regular staff. It's going to be a golden staff. That's your dream tonight, says the Gemara. Here, Kula Yema. The whole day, he was thinking about this dream. Ulu'urta, that night, Chaza, he had that dream. So I just wanted to say to you that you could stop the Gemara right here and say, okay, so this is psychology. You think about something all day long, so you're going to have that dream at night. Well, first of all, I want you to try that. I give you a challenge. Okay, I see over here a lot of amazing people over here. The Heilige Eitan. I give you a challenge. I want you tonight to go to sleep, having thought all day about whatever you want to think about. Think about something beautiful, and think about it. You will not be guaranteed to dream about it at night. You certainly will not be guaranteed to dream about it with all the bizarre imagery that is given over by Rabbi Yeshua to Hadrian. Now, Rabbi Yeshua was taking a risk, but obviously he was Chacham Adif Minavi. He was looking into Hadrian, knowing Hadrian's destiny, that Hadrian was going to end up spending his last years fighting the Persians and ultimately not prevailing. But this was it. He was planting the seeds into his head that this is how he's going to be thinking tonight, and that's exactly what happens. Now what? What's the next part of the story? So you think the Gemara would continue and say, at that point then, Hadrian said, no, that's the end. That's the end. He had the dream as predicted exactly by Hadrian, by Rabbi Yeshua. The next line, this is line number 6 in our Gemara, is Shavar Malka. Amalei Shavar Malka L'Shmuel. So now we've suddenly moved ahead into history, and Shavar Malka says to Shmuel, Amrita de Chachmisa Tuva, Eimli Machazina B'Chalmoi. Now suddenly we have the exact same story, the exact same setup, but suddenly everything has changed. It's now the Persian Empire. The king is called Shapur. Now it just happens to be that I did my research. It actually something that those of you that have the Art Scroll, what's it called again? It's called the History of the Jewish People by Art Scroll. It is so good. So you think, Menachem Nissel did all this fancy research. No, it's Rabbi Hirsch Goldwam, Tzaddik Zichron Livracha. But it's information. I'm not saying this just because of a history class. It's information that's crucial to understanding how the shir is going to come together. There was a king, our Gemara calls it Malka Shapur, with a base. In the history book, it's called King Shapur the First, Shapur. He was a historical figure. He wasn't just some person. He was a person that was famous. To give you some background, he ruled from the year 241 to the year 272 of the Common Era. That means that he was the most powerful monarch in the world 100 years after Hadrian. Just to give you some more background, this is the beginning of the Tkufa in Klal Yisrael called Amoraim. This is the time of the Talmud. In those days, Klal Yisrael was split. The Nasi was in Eretz Yisrael, and the Reish Galusa was in Bavel. A little bit like today, you have in Eretz Yisrael, you have Reb Chaim Kanievsky and Reb Gershon Edelstein running things over here. And in America, you have Reb Shmuel Kamenetsky and other Gedolim who are running things in America. So it's split between Eretz Yisrael and Reish Galusa. But in those days, the Reish Galusa really was more powerful, and the Reish Galusa at this point then still was the Rosh Yeshivas. Later on, 100 years later, the Reish Galusa was one thing, and the Yeshivas were Pumbedisa and Surah and Nahardoi were already their own fiefdoms, and that's how it was throughout Galus, which, by the way, was a good thing, because that means the Goyim could never control us, because the Yeshivas that we've always had was spread out. It's always been like that in history. So when Napoleon comes along with his big dream to create a Sanhedrin, so he cannot have power over the yeshivas in Lithuania or the Hasidic Shemaisis in Ukraine. That's how it always was throughout history. But it began with Shmuel. Shmuel was the Gadol Hadar at that time then, and he was close to King Shapur. Just to give you just one more piece of information over here. The year was 227. At that point then, Bavel was called Parthia. It's one of those words that you learned in your history class. Parthia, not the same as Paras. Parthia, the Parthians, they were conquered by the Persians. This was the first time since the Greeks, from 500 years, that Persia was now reassessing themselves as a superpower. They created what was called the Sasanian dynasty, Sassanin, the Sasanian dynasty. These people were incredibly powerful, and for about 100 years, they were the number one power. Rome was already in the beginning of their great decline. At the beginning of the Sasanian dynasty, the first generation were not good to the Jews, because they had this theory that everyone underneath them needs to have the same religion. Remember, Persians are not Muslims. Persians at that point then were not Arabs. They were Persians, like today, Iranians. And they had a religion called Zoroastrianism. Apparently it still exists. And whenever you see in the Gemara, Hahu Chavroi, Chavroi means the ancient priests that used to torment the Jews. That was the Tkufa before Shmuel, when they used to give tremendous tzaras to the Yidden. When King Shapur came along, he was Hadrian in reverse. His goal was to go to Rome and to conquer the whole world. And King Shapur says, the first thing I need to do is consolidate my home front. I'm going to be close to the Jews. Shmuel was a court Jew. Shmuel, there's many Gemaras of Shmuel in the court of Melech Shapur. And there's other Midrashim, there's other stories of Shmuel with the Melech Shapur, but he was the visionary that I'm going to be Alexander the Great in reverse. What Alexander the Great did 500 years ago for the Greeks, I'm going to do now. It says Melech Shapur. For the Persians, I'm going to conquer the whole West. I'm going to conquer the whole world for Paras, for the Persians. So with that, we can go back and we can relearn this story over here. Amalei Shavu Malka L'Shmuel Amrita Dechamisa Tuva Emily Machazina B'Chalmai. Tell me what I'm going to see in my dream. Amalei. So Shmuel says to him. Now you understand that both Shmuel and Rabbi Yeshua must have felt sufficiently comfortable to give this crazy dream over. Chazisi de Asirumai, the Romans are going to come, the Shavilach, and they're going to make you their slave. They're going to capture you. And you know what you're going to do as a slave? Tachnibach, Kashita. You're going to be grinding. Rashi says over here, Yakufa Escha Litchain Garine Tamarim. Your job is to grind date pits. Now you know that date pits are very hard. Grinding them is a useless thing to do, and it's hard work. But guess what? Your millstone is not a regular millstone. It's Berechayu de Dahava. It's going to be a golden millstone. Here, once again, Shabbat Malka thinks about this all day long. Ulu'urta chazaba, and that night he dreams exactly the dream that Shmuel mentions. So this stuff is, once again, this is about as trippy as the Gemara can get. But to be honest with you, all these Gemaras are kind of crazy over here. Let's just summarize over here. You have two historical figures. One wants to conquer the Persian Empire. The other wants to conquer the Roman Empire. They're coming from different directions. They're living 100 years apart. Each one is on the ascent. Each one at that moment then is very close to his Jewish subjects. One of them is given a dream where you're going to be a shepherd over insects and a shepherd over pigs, according to the Ben Yoyada, and you get a golden staff. And the other is you're going to be grinding date pits and you're going to have a golden millstone. The way that you grind it is going to be golden. What is going on over here? The Gemara doesn't explain anything. The Maharsha says basically nothing. This is a job for Reb Moshe Shapiro, Tzaddik Zichron Livracha, to enlighten us. And as you're going to see, these two little dreams in 2020, boy, are they relevant. So let's start off in the beginning. And I see over here who's listening to me. I'm zochet to have a whole group of Talmidei Chachamim, of men and women of very, very high level. So if I would say to you, what is the most famous Gemara of Rome and Persia coming together, I bet you, if you want to type it out in the corner, that some of you are thinking of the Gemara at the beginning of Avodah Zarah. That Gemara is like as classic as you can get. My students hate it when I say there's a famous Gemara. My definition of a famous Gemara is something that is quoted a lot. This Gemara, there's so many Mefarshim about it. It's the Gemara at the beginning of Avodah Zarah, Daf Beis Amud Beis. This is a Gemara that goes through in great detail what exactly is going to happen at the end of days. Moshiach is going to come. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to call the nations of the world to explain their actions in 2,000 years of Galus. And first, Rome is going to come, and then Persia is going to come. Roimi and Parasamadai. Now, this is 2,000 years after Hadrian, and 2,000 years after Melech Shapur Malchusa. This is at the end of history. Now, what's so interesting about what goes on is that the Gemara actually concludes at the end. Why these two? What happened to the Babylonians? What happened to the Medians? What happened to the other great nations that were along the world, the Mitzrim and everything like that? And the Gemara says, because these two nations continue to rule the world all the way to the Melech HaMashiach. The Persians and the Romans are the great nations of the world that greet the Melech HaMashiach. So I need to get this Gemara. Sorry about this. Okay, it's right here, over here. This Gemara I wrote out. Let's read this together. I'm just going to give you a shortened version. This is the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, Daf Beis Amud Beis. Darash Rab Chanina Bar Papa, B'Tei Rab Simlai, La'asid Lavai, Mevi HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Sefer Torah Omenicha B'Cheikai, V'Aimeh, L'Misha Asik Ba Yavai V'Yitel Scharo. So we're not going to learn this Gemara phrase for phrase by detail. We just need to get the salient points. Hashem takes a Sefer Torah and puts it over his chest, so to speak, and says, whoever studied Torah, now's your time to get your schar. This is the moment of the schar of the future. Miyad, nichnesa lefanav malchus raimi tchila. The Romans come in, okay? The Romans, senatus popularis coromanus, come. We want to get our schar. Why do they come first? So the Gemara says, Mishum de chashivi. They're very important. The Romans are very important. And then there's psukim, and there's this, that, and the other. Amalehem, B'maya Saktem. Hashem says, what did you do with your lives? Amru, they said, Rebbeinu Shalayim, creator of the world, Harbe Shvaka Takina, we made many marketplaces. We had a massive economy. We had a huge, big economy. Harbe Merchatza Sasina, we had many bathhouses. So the Romans were famous for their bathhouses. Today, it would be anything that would be some kind of form of, a place where you get to enjoy yourself, and places of pleasure. V'kulam lo yasinu ela b'shvil Yisrael, kedei sheyisasku b'Torah. So we made these economy, and we made these places of pleasure for Klal Yisrael, so they should study Torah. Amalem HaKadosh Baruch says, Shaitim, you idiots, Shaitim Shabba'ilam, Kol ma she'asisem l'tzerech atmecha asisem. You did it for yourself. You know why you had an economy? So that you could have in your marketplaces Zainais, women of ill repute. Hashem basically gives it to them. Now I want to interrupt over here that the Briskerov says, why did God call them idiots? Why did God call them liars? Who are you trying to kid? You're talking to Hashem? You did it for the Jews? Says the Briskerov. My Rebbe, Ramesh Brit, says, I heard this from the Briskerov himself. Today, it's in his Sefer. It's brought down in his Sefer in Chumash. It's a classic Briskerov. The Briskerov says that you know what? Because the Romans are telling the truth. Because everything that the Goyim are doing is for the Jews. They don't even realize it. But subconsciously, they know that all the big things that are happening in history is for the Jews. Nothing that happens in history that is called a major event, everything involves the Jews. Go check out history. Both from Persia and from Rome, throughout 2,000 years of history, it's all about the Jews. So now, enter the next subject. Who comes next? The Persians come in. Here we go. Persians come in. Amalem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, B'maya Saktem. You're number two. What do the Persians do? Rebbeinu Shalayim, Master of the universe. Harbe Gesharim Gesharnu. We made many bridges. Harbe Krachin Kavashnu. We conquered many countries. Harbe Milchamas Asina. We made many wars. The Kulam Le'asinu Ela B'shvil Yisrael. We did it for Klal Yisrael. You know why? Kedei sheyisasku b'Torah. They should study Torah. Amalem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu once again gives it to them, tells them they're a bunch of fakers, and that's how the Gemara continues over here. The Gemara concludes, why is it that they're the only two nations that get time of day with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Because they are the only two nations that really matter, because they're the two nations that come and greet the Melech HaMashiach. Now, this is where this class is going to start to get interesting over here, because let's stop and think about what are they saying in front of Hashem, and what are they saying in front of that Yom Adin, the moment of truth. So, the definition I'm going to give you, I heard it from my Rebbe, but really everything I'm telling you for the next 15 minutes is really the Maharal in Sefer Netzach. This is my Netzach Yisrael from the good old days. Perek Kaf Aleph has my scribbles from 20 years ago. This is where it's all happening over here. Perek Kaf Aleph. The bottom line is that the Romans and the Persians have got many things about them, but when it comes to leadership, so they are different. The philosophy of the Romans is kavod malchus and chashivas. We want to raise ourselves, that we should be considered chashuv. We want to be an economic powerhouse that enhances our prestige. I remember my Rebbe says, you want to know what prestige is? Prestige is you got to have the best car in your neighborhood. You have to constantly add additions to your house. For those of you that are working with teens, you need the latest iPhone. That's it. So we're always upgrading. That is a Roman mentality. And that is their whole idea of the economy, is to raise themselves up with more kavod and more chashivas, and everything should be bigger and better and bigger and better, and that's how Rome works. The Persians are different. The Persians don't really care about sort of climbing up the corporate ladder. That's not a value in Tehran. It's all about koach. It's all about building bridges to another place and conquering. Another place and conquering. We don't really care what happens. We don't really care if you turn this into an economy. We don't really care about how you mine it for prestige and money. We just want to shale it more and shale it more and shale it more. The nature of the Persians is that they're always on the move, always want to exert themselves to the next frontier. So you have over here two different mentalities. Says the Gemara in Yuma. The Gemara in Yuma, Daf Yud Amud Beis. You have Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. You should know that in the future the Persians will fall, Rome will fall under the Persians. And he brings a pasuk. And then comes along, no, Amar Rav, the Persians will fall under the Romans. The other one says the Romans will fall under the Persians. The Gemara says, you can't both be right. The Gemara answers, depends when you're holding in history. History is going to be Persia, Rome. Persia, Rome. They're going to take turns. Go and open up your history books. Now, this is going to end with the coming of Mashiach. Let's go back to our dreams where the Gemara begins, Rabbi Yeshua and Hadrian, Shmuel and Melech Shapur, and their prophecies into their future. Remember that they were saying, what are you going to dream tomorrow night? This is going to be that you're going to dream your own essence in the reverse, meaning how you're going to have your personal downfall. So there's a twist over here, because in Judaism, we don't believe in destroying your enemy. We believe in taking what your enemy stood for and turning it upside down. So the word gold is always the power of royalty. Zahav. Zahav is the right of Malchus. The Melech exerts himself with his gold. So when you are Rome, and you want to be chashuv, and you want to push yourself up, the ultimate reversal is to use your stick of gold to be a shepherd over insects. Now, he says insects. I don't know if the Maharal ever saw the girsa of the Ben Yoyada, but for me, the idea of being a shepherd over pigs, Rome actually, one of the symbols of Western civilization is the pig, but the pig is in a sense the lower part of what they're all about. The nesher is something higher, or the aryeh is something higher. The pig is like you're a pig farmer. Even in America today, it's a lowliness inside of you. But for sure with insects. So you're taking your idea if you want to be the melech that is chashivus, and instead we're taking your golden staff and you're going to do it over insects and pigs. What is Persia all about? Persia is about exerting your influence with koach and more koach and more koach. You want koach, you want muscles? Use your koach to grind dates with something made out of gold. In other words, we're taking everything that you fought for and struggled for, and your downfall is that you're going to be using that for something that is intrinsically useless. Now, the Maharal is not finished with us, because the Maharal is about to give us a game changer. Those of you who are sitting comfortably, get ready, because this is going to throw you off for a loop. Actually, I need a drum roll. Drum roll. Psh. Here we go over here. So, yeah, thank you, Eitan, and thank you, my niece and nephew, who are out there rooting for me. Listen to me carefully. The Maharal says that Persia is a code name, and he proves it from many sources. I'm looking at the clock. It's not so important to go through all the proofs. But the Maharal in Perek Kaf Aleph, I'm telling you now, if there's one Perek of the Maharal, and Netzach is filled with a lot of important things, because Netzach talks about Moshiach and everything. But this is basically classic Perek. Perek Kaf Aleph, 21 of Netzach. he says that Persia is a code name for Yishmael, for Islam. And he says Rome is the Christianity. In other words, it's Yishmael and Esav. Yishmael's Malchus is Paras. Esav's Malchus is Raimi. And they will fight it out until the end of days. That's what's going on over here. That began with Hadrian, and that began with Melech Shapur. But they're the ones that are going to fight it out until the end of days. Let me give you a quote from the Maharal. Ki Malchus Yishmael, or Malchus Paras, Hakol Malchus Echad. By the way, he's arguing with the Ibn Ezra over that. It's not our sugya today. V'davar yaduahu, ki Malchus Paras, or Malchus Yishmael, Heim Daimim, V'shavim bin Yonam, U'baganagasem. Anyone knows the Persians, which is not Arabic, which are not Arabs, and anyone knows that Yishmael, you should know they're one and the same. Today, it's so clear that Iran, which is a different culture and a different nation from the Arabs, they're together. They're one and the same. The Persians want to swallow the world with their koach, and Yishmael, the para Adam, when they come out, when Yishmael comes out as radical Islam, that's it. They want koach. That's what they want. They want to put themselves on top of everyone else. And that's the old-fashioned Yishmael, the para Adam, Yoda Bakol, the Gazlan, the Ganaf, the Malasinis Abrias. That's what they do with all their power. The Persians are exactly the same. And it's interesting that there's another similarity, which is not our sugya today. The Persian is the bear. The bear is one of the symbols of, like Achashverosh, something that is constantly looking for honey. And Yishmael, 10 portions of immorality were given to the world. They took 9. It's all this nus that goes on over there. That's not our sugya. Persia means Yishmael. Now, let's recalculate over here. We have for 2,000 years, Yishmael and Esav, Persia and Rome are fighting it out. The Zohar brings down that this Muhammad between Yishmael and Edom, those of you that want the notes, it's the Zohar in Parshas Ve'era, Daf Lamed Beis Amud Aleph. He brings down that this will go back and forth throughout history. Now I want you to stop and think of this for the moment, because you guys know your basic history. Christianity and Islam at war. So in Europe, so where was the great battleground? Spain. This was the reconquista of the Christians. For 500 years, it took them to get Spain back. And then 1492, it becomes Christianity. The Crusades are behind us. The Christianity won. They conquered Europe. Now, when the Maharal existed in the 16th century, the wars between Christianity and Islam had faded away, and it will continue to fade away for the next 500 years. Which means 16th century, 17th century, 18th century, 19th century, 20th century. The West is supreme. Esav runs the world. Islam is quiet. Islam, the Arab nations, they are basically sidelined in history. You have fascism. You have communism. Wait a second, you have the colonialism over centuries. It's all England, France, and Germany, and then eventually the United States. They run the world. They are the powerhouses. Egypt, who heard of Egypt? They were vassals for the Brits and for the French and for the Germans. That's what they were. They had no power. Saudi Arabia, Persia, they had no power. For 500 years, they went into history. When the Maharal was writing Perek of Aleph, no one knew what he was talking about. When Mark Twain walked around the Middle East, he didn't see any economic power. When did this all come back? After the Holocaust, you had fascism, went into history. Then what? Communism. That ran the world. That obsessed everyone. The Soviet Union with their vassals, Vietnam, Cuba, Angola, whatever you want. That turned into history as well. And then about 30 years ago, the fall of communism, everything became Islam once again. You have in Afghanistan, you have a bunch of people running around flip-flops and they bring down the Twin Towers. They are terrorizing that every person that wants to go to an airport has to have their shoes taken off because somebody somewhere, some Islamic person wants to be shaylet with koyach, to gain nothing except for that feeling that they have power. This is something that came back just now in history. So my Rebbe Ramesh Shapiro, he told me that he had a discussion with Rav Hutner. He says it's crazy that he said the biggest kafrim have to believe that all these midrashim and all these zayas and all these chazals were not written after World War II. That was Rav Hutner's joke line. These are written 2,000 years ago. They're at the very end of history. After 500 years of quiet, it's Persia and it's Rome once again fighting it out. It is whatever it may be. Today, you have these superpowers that they're trying to fight it out once again. Now, stay with me for one more moment. Because the same chazals, the same zayhas that talk about the great clashes also bring down that before Mashiach comes, the two of them will come together again. Seir v'chaisnai. Seir is Rome, chaisnai is the father-in-law Yishmael. You have a chibur, suddenly Christianity and Islam, they are embracing each other. You have in Europe, you have all the great capital cities, Paris, London, Berlin, Rome are full of Muslims. In America, Islam is going up and becoming more powerful, and they are accepted. I always say, as a Brit, that the job of the BBC is to take the lies of the Palestinians and to give it malchus, to make them sound like they're telling the truth. If I would tell you to read the Zayhas 200 years ago, how can it be before Mashiach comes? The Christianity and Islam are at war. Rome and Persia are at war. At the same time, they're best friends. And then you read the papers today, you'll see it's exactly what's happening. It's exactly what's happening today. Chazal have predicted this, that these two civilizations are going to be the best friends and they're going to be the biggest enemies simultaneously. That is exactly the newspapers that we read every single day in the last 30 years until Corona, until 3 months ago. Everything came to a grinding halt 3 months ago. It is something that I cannot begin to tell you. If I had prophecy, I would love to tell you what's going to happen next. The only thing I know is that everything was falling into place exactly the way Chazal says. And then 3 months ago, whenever this Corona thing began, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like you press the pause button on your machine and everything stops. And there's no Rome, and there's no Persia, and there's the wars that went on. There's no wars going on. No one is killing each other. There's no terrorism acts. The only terrorism left is some Canadian in some place that no one's heard of going on a rampage. Thank God we have Canadians to do something stupid. But that's it. Everything has come down to this like there's this pause. Where did Corona begin? So it began in China. But then China, by the way, the Ramchal says, is not part of Hashem's plans. Whenever you talk about world history, he says the Far East is outside of history. That's what the Ramchal says. When it starts to hit the West and the East, meaning Christianity and Islam, the two big places where it began was Iran and Italy. Go check your facts if you've forgotten what was it like 2 months ago. The Corona was in Italy and Corona was in Iran. That's what the big numbers were. Now Italy is no longer so interesting. It's America. Of course it's America. It has to be America. America has like whatever, 1 million cases, and we don't even know where this is going. We don't have a clue what is happening. We don't know what's going to be this time next year. We just know that for some reason the Kodesh Baruch Hu says, okay, enough of the way that history has been unfolding, the way everything's being predicted. We're changing the game. What's going to happen next? I don't know. But one thing I do know is that it is just incredible to see as my Rebbe says, don't bother reading newspapers. Go to Chazal and go and see what Chazal said 2,000 years ago and how it unfolds. Read the dreams that happened 2,000 years ago. And those dreams are still 100% relevant today in 2020. So I don't know. Reb Michal made a comment. I don't know exactly. Something to think about. We can think and we can predict. This is one of those moments where, again, according to my Rebbe, no one knows what's going to be tomorrow. No one knows for sure. The only thing that is 100% clear is that Kadosh Baruch Hu is so in control. He is so moving things exactly the way he wants it to be. And in a few minutes, I have to go and put on my mask and go to my weird minyan in the middle of the street with my social distancing, and that's it. And that's it. And then go back over here to this room where I spend 16 hours a day and sitting and waiting for what is going to happen next. What is going to happen next? The only thing we know for a fact is that the story ends with Mashiach. When and how, I don't know. But that's what has to happen over here. The story ends. Mashiach is the one that says, not Christianity, not Islam. Like the Rambam says at the end of Hilchos Malachim, that Christianity and Islam teaches the world that there's one God. That's the one thing they got right. And then we will show and flip everything around and how to serve Hashem and to bring the world to Kil Hashem Hamlucha, U'Moshel Bagayim, which is what we're waiting for from here via Menu. So I want to wish you all to hang in there. And more simchas, Rav Moshe Freilich, more simchas of David Shulman, more people getting better, like Rav Ginsburg and Rav Reisman in Los Angeles, more people coming home to their families, as Hashem Yisbarach. They should create a new Mahalach, and to bring the Geula. This is Chedesh, Iyar, Ani Hashem Roifecha. I will heal all sickness, and together we can makabel the Torah once again in Har Sinai with the Melech HaMashiach in Herav Yameinu. Thank you for listening, and thank you for coming. All the best. God bless you, my niece and nephew, and everyone else that's here. Thank you. Shkat.